Coming up then, a panel of incredibly powerful women in tech. What a title. These ladies are absolutely inspirational, and we are delighted to welcome them all today. Joining our panel are, round of applause at the ready please, Faith Grange from Microsoft, nonetheless. Lindsay Rodgers, who joins us from KCOM and who will be chairing the panel today. They'll be joined by Rahma Javed from Deliveroo, Dr. Melissa Sassi, who has flown in all the way from Texas to be here with us today. And we also welcome Christina Colmer McHugh from Hull's very own MoodBeam and Reid from Apple, who along with Rahma join us virtually today. A big round of applause for our Women in Tech panel, please. Do you want me to? You go there, Dan.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this fantastic event at the Burness Arena, and I'm absolutely delighted to be hosting this Women in Technology discussion. So my name's Lindsay Rodgers. I'm Director of Digital Transformation at KCOM here in Hull. And I've been in the tech industry for 30 years, starting out as a software engineer. And one question I get asked a fair bit is, during my career, who are my strong female role models? Who have they been? And for a large part of my career, I can honestly say that I didn't have any, because there just weren't any visible women in technology, especially in leadership roles. So I'm absolutely delighted to be sat here on this stage today with this fantastic panel. We've also got two ladies joining us virtually as well. So we've got Rahma Javed, from Director of Engineering at Deliveroo, and Reid, People Director EMEA at Apple, also joining us today. And then on stage, we've got Faith Grange, who is Director of Local and Regional Government at Microsoft. We've got Dr. Melissa Sassi, Chief Penguin of Student and Entrepreneur Experience at IBM, which is the best job title I've ever heard in my life. And Christina Colmer McHugh, who is founder of MoodBeam. Speak up a bit. Okay. So yeah, like I said, it's fantastic that we've got such a strong panel of role models here today. And whilst that's fantastic, it's simply not enough. So there's a huge skills gap in the technology industry at the moment. So with 87% of companies recognising that today or over the next 2 years, they're going to have a huge gap in skills. So the demand is definitely there. And whilst women are by no means the only underrepresented group within the technology industry, it is one of the easiest ones to measure. So despite women making up 50% of the population, only a fifth of roles in the technology sector are actually taken up by women. So it's absolutely critical that we continue not just to talk about this, but to actually take action as well. And that's some of the things that we're going to be discussing today. So I've got a few questions I'm going to run through with the panel. But I like to keep it quite informal, bit of a discussion. Any questions that you've got at the end, feel free to shout out. So I just wanted to start really with just getting to know my fellow panellists a little bit more. So I just wondered if you wanted to tell us what your personal experience as a woman in the technology industry has been. So I'll start with you, Faith.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. So I've been in the technology industry for about 24 years. And I think very similar to your experience, you know, there were certainly few senior female leaders that I could look up to go, that's where I want to end up, that's where I want to be. And it's so true that you can kind of be what you see. So it made it really, really difficult. And I also think, look, you know, the world has moved on a huge amount in 24 years. The HR processes have moved on a lot in 24 years. There was a lot of almost having to, I think when I started out, kind of put up with it. You know, you made your way if you could kind of just take the slings and arrows, almost ignore it, join in, you know, kind of be one of the guys that sort of, you know, kind of got along with stuff. I think what's great is I think it doesn't have to be that way anymore, and I think that's the opportunity that we've got as kind of female role models to kind of make sure that it doesn't have to be that way for kind of, you know, for the next generation coming up.
Yeah, thank you, fantastic. And Melissa, what about you?
Yeah, sure. So thank you first off for having me here in Hull. This is my first time here, and I flew all the way from the United States, so thank you. As a woman in tech, you know, I'm often the only, you know, woman in the room, especially when it's a highly technical, you know, conversation. And I think it's something that I've just kind of gotten used to. And it's something that I think has enabled me to kind of thrive in a way as a woman who knows how to navigate a different world. Is that good? Is it bad? I don't know. But what I will tell you is when it comes to creating products, services, and solutions, we need to have teams that are reflective of our customers and our audience. And if 50% of the world is made up of women and only 20 to 30% of the technology workforce is made of women, that is a problem, a big problem. And I also look at the technology entrepreneurship world. I'm not sure if you know that less than 3% of venture capital funds around the world go to female founders. Less than 3%. How is it that 97% of venture capital funds go to companies that have no female representation? Again, a challenge. I think there are a lot of strategies that many of us are thinking about, and I think you reflected on kind of role models. I think that's important, but I think also starting early, you know, really thinking about at what age should young women and young girls be exposed to computer science, and how do we demystify computer science in a way where we forget about these scary things like algorithms and if-then statements, and it's taught more like an art form, like a language. So I think there are a lot of different things that we could be tackling, from role models to education and the like. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to just come to the participants on the panel on the meeting as well. So, Rahma, do you want to tell us a little bit about your personal experience as a woman in technology?
Yeah, for sure. I hope everyone is able to hear me all right. My experience, I would say, is actually been quite mixed, because I always like to describe it as playing a game or being in a room where none of the rules are set by someone who thinks like you, someone who has the same background as you, someone who's gone through the same set of challenges as you. So I think very much, as the other panelists have already highlighted, it's very hard to enter an industry. And for me personally, it was without any role models. So ambition for me did not actually exist that much. And for me, it was about just doing trying my best, or trying to do a good job without actually even having a pretty ambitious goal in mind for the end. And I think I was quite blessed to actually have good mentors, and most of them actually were not women. I've never had a female manager throughout my entire career. And I've just kind of made do with it. But, now that I look back, I think, for me, I think I would have probably had set out on a different path, probably been a bit more ambitious, probably had, wanted to ask more for myself, had I seen any sort of role models in place and stuff. And because it wasn't there, a lot of times you just end up taking what you just end up getting without actually even asking further questions. I mean, I think we're all quite aware about, the studies that they've done in which they have highlighted that men often apply for roles even though they're not fully qualified for it, but women do not feel confident enough unless they're almost sometimes overqualified for something to ask for it. And I've seen this in my entire career. I've seen a lot of workplaces, being in a management role where it's always the men who are coming in and who are asking for more, who are asking for bigger roles, for bigger salaries. And it's always the women who are like a bit more shy and who feel bad and all of that stuff. And I was sort of very similar. And I think if you just see a more of an equal representation, then you're going to be able to see that those women can also speak up a bit more for themselves, rather than, again, being a very small minority in a room where, again, no one looks like you. The rules have not been made to suit someone, of your background or how you think, so to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rahma. Hannah, anything to add from your personal experience?
Sure, it very much echoes a lot of what we've heard, which is obviously unsurprising. I think it's slightly different for me because I've been in multiple sectors as well. It's always been male-dominated, every sector I've chosen to work in. So at the point in moving into the tech sector, there was nothing really different about my experience then. And obviously for me as a black woman, that's another challenge for me that I face all the time. So not necessarily just being the only woman, but just being the only person of colour, full stop, as well, in the room. And also I'm in a function and my professional expertise, which cuts across different industries, right? So I'm pleased to hear fellow panelists talk about our HR practices that I've developed over time. So I think my experience definitely more recently has been focused on how do we elevate and champion more females to both enter into technology, but also to progress. And I guess my experience, less my personal one, like I said, because I've got used to being able to navigate an organization, push past boundaries and kind of create my own path. It's been more for me about listening to other women's experiences as we talk about, how we're going to progress and develop different policies or procedures and getting their perspectives. What I often hear is something I talk about regularly, which is, you can't outperform your own level of self-esteem. And many people talk about imposter syndrome, but I think it's bigger than that at times as well. Sometimes it's even as a senior leader, it's not necessarily feel like I don't belong here or my place isn't here, but just questioning your own decision making, or when you have a consensus view that doesn't match your own, often kind of feeling like, can I be bothered to keep pushing against the boundaries, right? And so part of that is all about yourself and how you really create that path and journey. And what I hear from a lot of other female leaders is that kind of struggle and the energy to keep pushing past and creating that pace and change for themselves, which will obviously then enable a lot more women to progress as well. So I do see more of a shift just in general with the younger talent that we have coming on board, just being a lot more fearless. It's been my kind of current and recent experience, which is encouraging. And moving forward, I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about that this morning.
Fantastic, thank you, Hannah. And Christina?
Yeah, I think it really needs to begin at the breakfast table. I was sort of the last child of 5, the only girl, so maybe I started early. But I do think that it needs to begin with what do you want to be when you grow up, as talking to a girl as well as a boy, getting involved in that conversation, having an opinion, having a say. But I guess my career has spanned 20 years in media before MoodBeam, and obviously that was a very male-dominated area as well. And I guess if I hadn't decided early on to do what I wanted to do, and maybe go the less traditional path, then I would have been more apologetic. And I think that's a major thing, is never to be apologetic for being a woman. Starting off as a girl, the opportunity should be there for you as much as your brother. And I think, I had that battle in media, and I think there's still one to be had there to a certain extent, but I only really began my life in technology 6 years ago. So that was something that I'd written about plenty of, technology and business and great inventions. I never thought I would be one to do it myself. So technology to me, taking the gender out of the equation, is really being able to solve a problem. And in my instance, there was no technology out there to do that. So I would try and create it. So if I didn't have that ethos from an early age, then I would have deferred maybe to, somebody else, potentially male. I was lucky to co-found with a male, and I'm not saying that opened any more doors, but I'm certainly sure that when it came to investment, that certainly helped, battle the 3% mark that Melissa talked about. So I do think it's really important to begin those conversations early on. you know, what do you want to do? I'm the mum of 2 girls now, so I'm right in the eye of the storm. And they're at that stage where they're wanting to make choices, and, you know, we've got STEM, we've got STEAM, we've got technology. I think no matter what industry it is, the message should be the same, that anything's possible.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. I think there's a couple of really good points that have come out there, and I think one of the phrases that you used, Faith, was kind of thinking early on that you know, you've got to be one of the boys, one of the guys, and that's something that I've been absolutely, you know, against right from the off. Really, I never wanted to compromise who I was and my personality in order to get on, in order to progress and be part of the technology industry. And I think that's so important, you know, when we're talking about diversity. And I think that's one of the key points. It's not women that need to change, it's the environment in which we work in, it's the education that we receive, it's the way that we're spoken to, the conversations that we have, it's those things that need to change. It's not that necessarily that women need to change. So one of the things that does kind of really interest me is do you think that there's kind of specific skills, and I'm always a bit unsure about you know, stereotyping in these situations, but do you think there's kind of specific skills that women bring to organisations, and the statistics that where women, you know, are part of the decision-making process, that companies are more successful? So I think there's statistics on there. So I'm just really interested to hear why you think that might be, and what particular characteristics do you think women tend to have that make that so. Melissa, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily believe that we need to look at it from the perspective of, wow, women are good at this and men are good at that, because I think that's a dangerous slope. And I think that there are a key set of skills that are necessary for the future of work, regardless of whether you're a male or a female. And I'll go back to one thing I said in, you know, when I responded to the first question, and that's, you know, really thinking about, you know, how do we create teams and products, services, and solutions by implementing design thinking. And that's really looking at what are your, you know, customer, you know, wants, needs, frustrations, pain points, aspirations. And if your team is not reflective of your audience, and if you don't have a diverse and inclusive team, you're not going to create, let's say, you know, award-winning products or services or solutions that truly solve the problems that you were talking about. I mean, in the tech field or industry, we're not just creating tech for the sake of tech. It's you're trying to solve problems. And if you don't have your audience insights and you're really talking to them, with them, and understanding them and being reflective of them, you're not going to create things that are, you know, truly meaningful for them. And, you know, if you take gender out of the equation and you look at it from the perspective of, let's imagine, you know, us four are sitting here in a tech team and we decide we're going to build this mobile application. And let's say it's for the blind. And let's say all four of us can see quite well. And let's say we've never included anyone who is blind in our team, in our research, but we're going to create this awesome app for the blind. Are we going to fail? Probably so. So it's the same kind of perspective. You have to really think about how do you create that right team and how do you be reflective of your audience. Less so, you know, what are those specific skills? We all need problem-solving skills. We all need critical thinking skills. We all need innovation and creativity and teamwork and collaboration, and we all need to know how to persuade others. We all need to know how to adapt and have grit, and all of these things that you find in, you know, studies from either the World Economic Forum or LinkedIn Learning or what have you. I don't necessarily see it as boys should have this skill and girls should have that skill.
Thank you. Anything that you want to add to that, Faith? I think some of the skills that you kind of talk about there, like design thinking, the really kind of ways of working that require cross-functional teams and collaboration. And I do wonder if there's, as well as kind of skills that cross-functional teams can bring, there's a bit of a perception problem as well about the roles in technology, and that there's not really an awareness of kind of the full range of skills, not just the pure technical skills that are needed. Any thoughts on that, Faith?
Look, I think you're absolutely right, and I think also there's such a range of jobs within technology, right? I am on the sales side. I'm on the relationship development side. You know, you can, even if you don't you might not actually be particularly interested in becoming a developer, right? But actually there's a whole range of jobs. You might be a business person. You might love the kind of cut and thrust of trying to get investment into a business, you know. And I think it's also about opening up just the massive range of roles that there are that technology organizations need. And I totally agree with what Melissa was saying. I think that this is not about men versus women. It's not about here's all the skills that you're missing, guys, if you don't have it. It's here's the perspective that you're missing if you don't include 50% of the population in your workforce. Here's the perspective you're missing if you don't have a range of people with abilities and disabilities. Here's the perspective you're missing if you don't have a range of people from different cultural and ethnic backgrounds. It's about, we need diversity of thought and perspective, and that's what all these different groups and then individuals bring. It's not about these people have this skill set, these people don't have this skill set. And I actually think that thinking like that, it's really bad for men as well. You know, we talk about toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity comes from boys will be boys. Men do this. Men think like this. Men aren't empathetic. You know, men don't feel the same way that women feel. Men can't talk. That is what creates toxic masculinity. It's actually not fair on men to talk about men and think about men in that way. Men are as empathetic and caring as women are. They've just been taught by society not to be. And actually what we need to do is unlock the range of skills and capabilities that every individual has. You know, at Microsoft, we talk about come as you are, do what you love. That's what we need to create and foster as environments where every individual can do that.
Thanks, Faye. Rahma, I'd like to come to you again as Director of Engineering in obviously a very male-dominated area of the industry. How easy do you think it is for people in general to be authentic to themselves in the environment that we're currently working in?
I think there's a lot of pressure in the environment because oftentimes, authenticity isn't as valued. You just have to keep on going. You almost sometimes have to put a facade. In terms of yes, I can do this. Actually one very, you just talked about, in a very demanding company, and actually I would say always sometimes even chaotic company like Deliveroo, a lot of times people will just look around and see that everyone's just pushing on. And I completely agree. I think resiliency, grit, these are core skills and extremely important skills to have. But I think on the lines of being authentic, it is also normal to actually, at times maybe feel a little burned out, or at times feel that I need a break, right? And I think, along those lines, that's where you can actually sometimes see that people shy from being authentic. They would rather almost follow the crowd and just go yes, I'm just going to keep on going, because if I am not, if I'm feeling burnt out, or if I feel like I need a break and I speak up about it, or I speak up about my mental health or the impact on my mental health, then it's going to be frowned upon or unaccepted and stuff. Whereas actually, I don't think that is the case. I think, everyone, and I say this, to my own group that I have, which is everyone has their own pace, everyone has their own speed, and you need to figure out what is actually going to work for you, right? And yes, not everyone can probably end up taking, or being successful in every environment. I do think there is a big thing around environment fit, but I don't think you have one kind of individual who can only thrive in an environment. You have different personalities. And I think, that's where, going back to what has already been said a lot about being diverse and bringing diverse people together, I think that's where you can actually start appreciating diversity of styles, right? Tech has really evolved from, those super smart, geeky, quote unquote guys who could, and, hanging out in a bro club, who could at times be, sometimes, not empathetic, or, just keep on going and being, not having the best manners and stuff. But I think, tech has moved much beyond that because so many different personalities have come into the mix, and people have started appreciating that we no longer need one type of personality to actually succeed in tech. But I think, the path of authenticity, I think there's still like ways to go there, but I would definitely say it has, evolved more and more, and people have started feeling a bit more comfortable in bringing their authentic self to work rather than identifying or discovering a profile that they've seen in the organization that works and trying to emulate that, or the fake it till you make it, as people say, like that sort of a mindset. But I think the thing is, I personally believe that people work best in the environments in which they can feel very authentic. They can be themselves, they can create, they can be creative, and they can do their best work, because this whole thing around like fake it till you make it, it's like it will burn you out pretty soon. So
yeah. Thank you, Rahma. One of the things I'd like to pick up, Christina, is you talked about the creative process around your product, and Melissa, you've talked about the creative side of it as well. And I think that's something that's often underestimated in terms of technology, and also with your particular product, Christina. I saw a survey a few years ago that said that a lot of women don't associate technology with being able to make the world a better place, and actually that's something that inspires a lot of women and girls, is actually doing something for the greater good, more caring kind of approach, and actually you've combined the two with what you've done. So that creative side of it, I think, is really important that we get that across in terms of the roles in technology.
Absolutely. I think well, obviously we're right in the middle of this, and I find it so fascinating every day, the conversations we're having, because obviously MoodBeam was created to get people to talk, to say what the happy moments or the less happy moments are in their day. And then because we've now placed this solution within Workplace, it's that ability to allow people to feedback on how events impact their day, because ultimately if you're not happy, you're not going to do a good job, you're not going to be your best self. But I think taking it to where we are now, post-pandemic, can I say that? Or mid-pandemic, there's never been a better time than now to bring technology to the fore, because ultimately everybody's looking for an answer, everybody wants to be their best self. And I guess, we are the measure of happiness as a technology, but everybody has that ability to be empathetic, to actually speak up and say, this isn't making me too happy. And it's the quiet voices that our technology captures the most sometimes, because they're the people who, whether it's gender, whether it's an inclusion, negative, whatever it is, they don't feel included. So to be able to offer a solution that allows everybody to be part of the conversation is so, so important. And we've never had a better opportunity than right now, because we have, the whole conversation, and LinkedIn is thriving on this. I love it at the minute, of the whole sort of Gen Z versus the older generations within a company. And I think there's a fantastic headline in the Washington Post, Gen Z baffle their older colleagues. It's a conversation that needs to be had, because if you are going to bring out the elephant in the room, which is that, these young people who are the future, to embrace technology for the good, then you're going to be able to take the fear factor out of people who've been told to work a certain way for the past 20, 30 years. So I, as you can tell, really, really passionate to make sure that technology is in place for the right reasons, and allowing those conversations to happen. Really, really important, and no better time than right now.
Yeah, I think I want to go back to one of the things that you said, and that was around kind of tech for good, making the world a better place. I think there was this misconception, I think, for some time, that you couldn't do both, meaning make money and make the world a better place. And I think technology has this really wonderful, and working in the tech sector has this really wonderful opportunity of doing well while doing good. So meaning making the world a better place, and also earning an income that allows you to fulfill whatever your personal and professional goals are. And I think that by laddering up into kind of whatever your tech for good cause is, it gives you a more, I don't know, and this may sound altruistic, but kind of something more to wake up to in the morning every day, where you wake up and you say, this is the work I was meant to do. And I know I've got this big, wicked world challenge that I'm trying to solve, and I can't do it alone, and it requires technology to do it. For those of you who are not aware of, hey, what is that thing that wakes you up in the morning and you haven't figured that out yet? I like to go to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, so at globalgoals.org, and there are 17 goals that are all about alleviating poverty and making the world a better place. I personally am passionate about number 4, which is quality education. I'm also passionate about gender equality and decent work and economic growth. Obviously, they're all important, but there are specific tactics in each of these goals that will help you figure out, well, wait a second, how can I, in my own individual life, in my professional life, go about solving some of these challenges that might seem bigger than me, bigger than all of us, but what is that thing that I can work on that wakes me up in the morning so I can feel proud of the work that I do and know that I am solving this big, wicked challenge that's helpful for those after me.
Thanks, Melissa. I think, we've got a lot of young people in the audience today as well, and I think we can all probably imagine, 10 years' time from now, how we would like to see the industry kind of evolve. But what can we actually do as role models to make sure that becomes a reality? So we're not just talking about this, that we continue in the conversation, but we're actually taking action and making sure that the situation changes so that the future generations can benefit from that. Hannah, I'd like to come to you on that question first, please.
Yeah, sure. I think there's a huge part about paying it forward, and I think even the platform that you've created today is just one of the many examples of that. And I think we've talked about how we get at the very inception, right? How do we get more young girls and young women interested in technology? And part of that is role modeling and learning more, right? And so the more you can engage, I think from a senior leadership perspective, the more you can engage with young women and young female talent, the better. It's something that I'm personally passionate about, and it does literally go back to that going back to schools. I can remember people that have come along in my career and inspired me at moments, and that definitely changed the shape of the course of what I was about to do next. So that's something I'm personally passionate about doing, and I think there's a breadth of that, right? So I do it from like the secondary school through to university, when people are actually trying to make real decisions, because I think you definitely change your mind along that journey as well. And then I think there's something about, even I've got a talk this week with PhD students, right, who are also trying to navigate their career path. So I think personally devoting some time to paying it forward. And I think there's something about sponsorship versus mentorship for me as well. Don't get me wrong, mentoring is obviously really crucial and a really great path for all of us to be involved in. And I add that to allies as well. So I think men have a huge role to play in the path of changing the course of the path for females as well. But us as female is more on the sponsorship side, right? So really finding that person that you're going to be almost partly accountable for how they progress and develop in their career, and not just leaving everything to chance. So really helping to cultivate that, right? Helping them to shape, how do you actually go for the next role? How do I put myself in a position where I can get an opportunity versus waiting to be recognized, which we know is a female characteristic, or as Rahma said earlier, waiting till I hit 100 out of 100 attributes on the job before I actually go for it. And really giving that person that confidence and encouragement and belief to help them to navigate the next stage of their career. So I think putting yourself in that position to help cultivate a career is really important for us as senior leaders. And as I say, just extending that to our male colleagues from an allyship perspective as well for sponsorship.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hannah. Christina, I think you wanted to say something.
I was just going to add as well, I think that, and I'm really passionate about this as well, is that the worlds of education and industry need to come together sooner at an earlier age, so that I know I was a perfect example maybe of the brain drain, from Northern Ireland coming across to England to do my journalism degree. But I think it's really, really important to know that you're going to be potentially creating your own technology someday, or starting your own business, or working in a business that wants your opinion 24/7. And I think the sooner we start that, the better. And when you're, you know, I'm involved now with the University of Hull as an entrepreneur in residence, and I'm really privileged to be a part of that conversation, because I'm getting to meet the people who are learning to have an opinion already. But they need to be prepared for what the world of business looks like, not when you suddenly at 21 graduate. So I think it's really, really crucial that we start to weave that in together. So what ideas have you to bring, you know, today? Can I help you with that? And I think it's learning from each other is the key to success, because at 46 years of age, I am happy to say to anybody in the room, can I learn something from you? Because I certainly don't know everything. I can tell you my story and I can share my opinions and ideas, but I think it's really, really important to bring younger people into that conversation to help me learn something I didn't know, and that is a big bit, I think, going forward.
Absolutely, completely agree with that. Faith, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important for us not just to be role models to women coming up through the organizations and coming up through education and kind of encouraging people in. It's really important that actually, you know, many of us have got to a point in our career where we can challenge. And I think that's really, really important. You know, challenging and sponsorship are really important. You know, sponsorship is different to mentorship. You know, mentorship is about helping people to develop and helping people to think about their skills and kind of direct them. Sponsorship is actively supporting people through the organization. But I also think that around kind of, you know, challenging the systems, challenging the setup, that made it harder for us so that it isn't as hard for anybody else. And absolutely, you know, to Hannah's point, that's where men come into it as well. You know, we still aren't the majority in the workforce. This isn't about women fighting their way up and bashing through and, hey, we've done it. This is about the guys who are still in the majority power, you know, the white male allies genuinely being allies, not just for women, but actually for the broader diverse population we need to bring in.
Absolutely. Melissa?
I was really excited when I heard, you know, the panelists talking about, you know, youth enablement or youth empowerment or including young people. One of the things that I do at IBM in my role as the head of our student and entrepreneur experience team within the IBM Z division of IBM is I'm really big on making sure that youth are part of the decision-making process. I have an amazing young lady. She's actually from the UK. Her name is Lella, and I first met Lella when she was 16 years old. I wrote an article about her about 6 months ago, and I called it My 16-Year-Old Mentor. She's now 17. I got her a position within IBM. She's now the first minor, if you will, the first intern below the age of 18 in our team. We broke glass ceilings, and it took us some time to get through the process and the sausage factory of, you know, recognizing that yes, it's okay with her parents. Yes, her parents want her to do this. And you know what's really interesting is when I sit down with Lella, I learn more from Lella, who again is 17 years old, than I do from many of my colleagues who are twice her age. Tomorrow I take a train back to London, and we find out if Lella has won an award for Women of the Future. I recently nominated her for a Princess Diana Award, and she won. And I'm here to say that it is incumbent upon all of us, whether we work in tech or even outside of tech, to include young people, especially young girls, into the decision-making, you know, arena. And when you look across the room at your team, to kind of think about, do I have a young person up on the stage? Do we? Are we practicing what we preach? How do we make sure that we as leaders are looking around the room and bringing others up along with us, whether we're male or female or non-binary or whatever we are? Oh, I needed that.
Thank you, Melissa. Just off the back of that, then, we've got a lot of people, a lot of young girls in the audience today. Has anybody got any questions that they'd like to ask of us, or any thoughts, any comments, anything that we can learn from you, as Melissa says?
Everybody's shy today.
Yeah. 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 That's a really good point. So the question is, we talk about women not applying for roles that are above them, but actually, do we need to do more to approach women and say, you're good at this, you should be applying for these things? It's that encouragement side of things. Anybody on the panel wants to take that one?
I've had a lot of women approach me, within the last, 6 months to a year, looking at either my job and the thing, because I had an opportunity that I created for myself. I created my own job. I created my own job title. I did that at IBM. I did that at Microsoft. I did that when I worked on Wall Street. And one of the things that, they asked me is, how did you create your own job? How did you do that? And I think the biggest piece is, among other things, is recognizing that you're not an imposter. You belong at that table, whatever that table is, that, everyone around they're not smarter than you. You've got certain superpowers that you need to own those superpowers and kind of take control of your own personal brand. But I think the other piece of it is recognizing that you've got a job description and you shouldn't be afraid to go after something if you only have 80% of the skills. And that, you may get ignored, you may get a no, but how do you, kind of go after things? How do you build your network where, in a way, jobs are coming to you? So the last few jobs that I've had in the, for the most part, they've kind of just happened. It hasn't been that I've been pounding the pavement trying to get my foot in the door. It's because I've been spending my time thinking about, how do I want to control what others see about me? What do they say about me when I'm not in the room? And that's in my free time, taking 10 steps back and thinking, all right, what can I do in my free time to build my personal brand so that people know who I am and what I am, so that before I even apply or get into a room, that hiring manager already knows who the heck I am, what I'm about, and thinks, yes, I want to work with you. Yes, I want you on my team. Yes, I'll go to bat for you. I want to sponsor you. I want to help you get places. I want to think about, if someone asks me about whatever it is, you're the person I'm going to refer them to. So I think there is a ton that we need to do to have our own, have control over ourselves and our personal brand, but also being very confident and not being afraid to just shout about, I achieved this thing. I did this thing and continue to do that thing. No, I'm not arrogant. No, I'm not angry. No, I'm not full of myself. I achieved that and I'm going to talk about it. And you're going to know about it and it's okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Melissa. Beth?
Yeah, I think just thinking about that, I mean, I love that kind of, there's personal ownership in there. There's owning your skills and how great you are and being able to shout about that. I do think, thinking about it in terms of kind of, I think somebody mentioned like that kind of diversity and thought approach. Some people find that really hard, men and women find it so hard.
It's really hard.
So, and I think also, again, it's something that you build up over time, you develop over time. So yes, I do think that we've got to go out and tap up talent. I also think we've got to really develop the talent pool that's out there, because, when I go and recruit, I'm recruiting from the same pool all the time. We've really got to focus on bringing up the next generation and making the workforce more diverse from the very start. But we've also got to think about, there's some super simple things you can do in a recruitment process. You can keep it open for much longer. You can write the job description in a way that doesn't talk about 500 skills that somebody looks at and goes, I've got to have 80% of those. That talks about 8 more general skills that allows you to get into the process and then have a conversation. Because I think that what we've got to do is help people to get those first steps and get those roles in organizations so that they can start to build up that kind of confidence and that kind of body of work they can stand in front of and go, I am this good and this is why you should employ me.
But I think one other thing is we often think that in order to move into this job, we need to have this great, CV or resume of like paid jobs and job titles. If I think about when I kind of transitioned my career, about 5 years ago from one thing to another, how did I do that? I did it by showcasing my volunteerism. So we all need to remember that it's not just about, I had this job and here's how much I got paid and here was my job title. There are practical things that we can all do that are unpaid. And I'm not suggesting that we all can live off of unpaid roles. We have responsibilities, we have bills to pay and kids to look after and whatever. But there are opportunities in front of us that can enable us to move from here to here. That could include volunteering with nonprofits. It's super low risk. Who's going to tell you, no, you know what, I don't want you to volunteer with me. No, I don't want you to get that practical experience. You can do that with a startup. So many startups are just excited to have someone there to help them with project management or marketing or communications or development or whatever. Associations like the IEEE, the largest engineering organization on the planet. Raise your hand, become a member, and you're there part of the committee. Nobody's going to tell you, no, I don't want you to help join our marketing committee to help bring people to our conference. Those are all leadership skills that can go on your CV and work toward helping you get that job that you want to land.
Yeah. Christina?
I think totally agree with that. And I actually think that, especially for, you guys sitting in front of us and your peers, that the new currency going forward isn't financial, it is happiness, it is that satisfaction that you are going back to doing what you want to do that day. And when it is, obviously we do all need to earn a living in some respect, but I do believe that comes second anyway, that if you are giving it your best shot, you're got the confidence inside you to say, like Sam, who came to us basically just after graduating, and we were like really, lean startup. We said we'd love to employ you, but we can't afford you right now. And he says, I don't want that. I want to come and work for you because I really believe in what you're doing. You can't buy that, and you probably couldn't pay him enough for that either. But the point I'm trying to make is that he wanted to be happy and part of something that was going to change his world and potentially others. And I think the new currency going forward, the new GDP is happiness, not how much you're going to earn in that big fat bonus check some months ahead. That's not important. It's the real-time happiness and satisfaction that is going to encourage you guys to get the job that you want to have.
I think that's so important. And the thing that sprang to mind when you asked that question as well was just how can we support each other. And I think I've had more opportunities opened up to me through networking with other women throughout my career, and I think it's just so important that it's not a super competitive environment. We've got to remember that it should be a happy place. And actually, sitting on this stage now, surrounded by these people, makes me very happy.
But there are toxic. Yeah. I think there are toxic situations. Whether it's male or female. I've been in situations where I'm like, wow, you're a woman in tech and you're now kind of keeping me down. We've all had, both toxic men, toxic women. It happens everywhere. So I think it's really important for you also to know when to stand up for yourself, regardless of who's in front of you, and know your self-worth and recognize when you really shouldn't take it anymore and you really need to do something about it. But it's hard, and I've been in a situation where I've had to be quiet and I didn't know how to say anything. And I ended up switching jobs because I couldn't deal with it. Did I regret it? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think we're out of time now. I could have carried on the conversation for ages. If anybody's got any more questions or anything that they wanted to raise with us, come and see us after the panel. But thank you all very much for your time. Thank you to Rahma and Hannah on the video call. I know it's not easy, but thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you to everybody in the audience. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.